All right, we are live. Internet, what is going on? Happy Tuesday. Normally we do these, I feel like, on a Wednesday. It's been so long, I can't even remember.
Kind of forgot it was Tuesday. How are we doing, everyone?
Yeah, what's going on, everybody? Appreciate you guys tuning in. It's been an awful long time since we've done a live stream.
A little too long, yeah.
A little too long. Get excited. If you like these live streams, we're going to be doing a lot more of them here, especially for members inside of our community. I want to make sure you have a chance to see Nate's pretty face more regularly, really.
We're back. We're going to be on here a whole lot more. A lot of stuff going on with the business. So, but we're happy. This is what we love to do. So we're happy to be back training with you guys live.
That's right. Comment below. Let us know where you're watching from. I see Akshay is in the desert and that it's raining there. That's pretty rare. Comment below here. I see we've got about 75 people across a couple different channels here. Everybody in our Zoom room, make sure you turn your cameras on. We see you guys. Don,
what up,
Michael,
Zoom room?
Megan, Deb, Gerardo, Avola. Nice to see all of you guys. Don't be shy. Turn your cameras on. You'll have a chance to talk to us, and I'll ask you to unmute when you have questions later in the live stream. We'll give everybody about 1 or 2 more minutes to come in here. If you're anything like Nate, you're always late. So
it's not true.
All right, we've got James from Long Beach, California. Angie from Kentucky. John Wynn from San Fran. Any international? It was pretty cool. Last time we had somebody from Ireland.
That's right.
And I think they were watching us at like 2 in the morning, too. Yeah. Oh, here we go. All right, Patrick from Marco Island. Gerardo's from Las Vegas. Gerardo, are you in both Zoom and live? Look at that. You're watching us everywhere. I love it.
Not going to miss a second.
That's right. Gregory, we're excited for this too, man. I appreciate that. So for those of you guys who haven't been on one of these before or sort of experienced this, here's how this goes. So we are live in a Zoom room right now. I'm seeing 6 to 7 beautiful faces here inside of our Play Your Court Plus community. It's our highest level of community. Those folks, sorry, they're going to have priority. They're our VIPs. So they're going to be able to interact with us, turn their cameras on, talk to us, ask questions throughout the live stream. Our Play Your Court Basic members, if you are a Basic member, you should be watching this inside the Play Your Court Talk Tennis group. If you drop comments there, we'll see them and respond to you guys. And then if we have bandwidth, depending on how many people show up, depending on how much time we have, we'll certainly try and field some questions from those of you watching us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Periscope. I don't know. You're watching us on a lot of different weird stuff. All right, here. Oh, wow. We got a Croatian. Stipe from Croatia.
Cool. Thanks for being here.
Jerry from New Jersey. Houston, Atlanta.
I see a Westerman comment.
Oh, my gosh. We haven't been live in so long. And Ian Westerman from Essential Tennis immediately rolls in here with the troll.
And we're done. You slap the forehand. That's it.
All right. Yeah. So, guys, today we're going to be talking about how to just destroy forehands. 5 key steps to improving their forehand. Is that right?
Well, there'll be some stuff. We're going to break it down in basically 5 categories, and then there'll be some subcategories underneath that. But we're going to talk about the key mechanics that really take a forehand to an advanced forehand. So, you know, with the forehand on the Pro Tour, whether it be ATP or WTA, there's a lot of stylistic differences amongst them. Obviously, the Kyrgios forehand looks very different than, say, maybe the Simona Halep forehand. But they fundamentally all have similar biomechanics that allow them to operate at such a high level. And those are the key things that we're going to go over today, that we're going to make sure and kind of really decipher what it is, the key components that separate, you know, an intermediate forehand to a really advanced forehand.
We're all about actionable items here too. If you guys have watched our instruction, this isn't going to be, you know, detailed dissection where your head's spinning and you can't figure out how to do any of this. We have very actionable steps here, right? Like our game plan whenever we do these live streams is to jump on, quickly instruct you for maybe 10, 15 minutes. And then we'll definitely open up the floor for questions at the end, again, in order of VIP Plus members, then Basic members in the private Facebook group. And then if we've got
all
time,
know I'll go long. It'll be longer than 20 minutes because I'm super long-winded.
He's especially long-winded today. All right, you ready to get this party started?
Let's get it.
Tell us if you're ready. Just slap ready on your keyboard just to let us know you guys are excited and ready to learn from Nate. He just gave up because he was so upset.
I had to get a racket.
There he is.
I had to get a racket.
All right, we got a lot of people that are ready. Let's do this. Game on.
All right, so the first thing we're going to talk about is the ready position. We're not going to get super into grips. Our suggestion is if you're looking to develop a really good forehand, you need to have a version of the Western grip, a semi-Western. That's kind of where we when we're coaching, that's where we lean, but we teach and have played with an Eastern grip, you play with an Eastern grip. Eastern
do.
grips are great as well. And the Western grip, we see it more and more, especially with the players that have emerged in the last 5 years. But that's something that's quite a bit more high level, but we're not, if that's your thing, that's your thing. The continental grip is really the one where it's like, it's really going to be difficult to hit these different phases of the forehand with the continental grip. But let's jump into the ready position. And I know you're thinking, well what, how does this apply?
Wait a second.
Yeah.
You said you're going to add power to my forehand.
A lot of players are initiating their stroke incorrectly. And if you're doing that, if you start wrong, it's really hard to hit the other parameters of the stroke correctly. So we're taking a look at the Rublev forehand. I'm going to zoom way in. And step one here is what the non-dominant hand is doing. We're going to see different versions depending on whether you have a two-handed backhand or a one-handed backhand, but we want the hand up towards the throat. So if I have a two-handed backhand, I'm going to start higher in my grip and I have the ability to raise my hand. Whereas if I have a one-handed backhand like myself, my hand is going to be up higher on the throat. Now you might be thinking Rublev has a two-handed backhand, his hand's up in the throat. You can do that too.
And we are talking about a higher level forehand. If you've seen previous videos of ours, you've heard me specifically instruct that at a lower level, if you're having issues with your backhand, that maybe you want to keep that top hand, your backhand hand closer so that it's easy to switch. When you're a higher level, you're more comfortable and you have this ability to shift down here and change grips when you're hitting a backhand. So remember, we're talking about high-level forehands, so don't get it confused.
So beyond just the specifics of the non-dominant hand, something else that you want to note here is the importance of the orientation of the racket. We want the racket face pointed down, right? So sometimes as players, we have a tendency to square up, right? And we really want those strings to face down towards that 45 degree, and we want to make sure that we're keeping our elbows off our hips. Now, throughout this, I'm going to show you multiple different forehands because I think it's important. You may be like, well, if we look at Curious, it's going to look very different than what you may be doing, and we're not saying that you necessarily change. But fundamentally, as I mentioned in the beginning, a lot of these forehands are going to operate the same. So Simona, two-handed backhand. Hand starts down on the grip in the ready position. But again, take a look at what's going on with the racket face. The racket face stays down in the ready position. And the racket being down with the face closed, the likelihood of it staying closed throughout the stroke it is much more likely, right?
You want me to give the folks a zoom here so they can see that? I don't know if I can come in any tighter than that. I'll do my best. There we go.
Yep, so we can see there Simona's hand on high up on the grip. Racket face is down.
Non-dominant hand.
Thank you. Yeah, non-dominant hand. And as soon as she preps for the forehand, here her hand will come off. All right. And we'll see that orientation of the racket head going up. So that takes us to number two. We'll stay here with Simona for just a moment.
Before you do number two, I want to say hello to Jimmy Jaime Jorge from Miami in the finals of the bracket challenge.
Oh, let's go.
Jimmy, that's
All
awesome,
right.
man. Tell us
Very
what
cool.
level you're playing in. We're very, if you haven't heard of the bracket challenge, we're very excited about this new Flex League product. Registrations for the fall season coming up here in a couple of weeks, so keep an eye out for that. But Jimmy, that's awesome, man. Tell us what level you're playing in. Carry on, step two.
All right, so Simona, in my opinion, I mean, as far as fundamentals, I mean, as sound as they come. You know, whether you're a dude or not, like copying the Simona Halep forehand is not going to be a disservice. So the unit turn here is really important. And what you'll notice is that Simona initiates the unit turn, and this is simply the coiling of the upper body and the hips. And this is initiated with the non-dominant hand. The non-dominant hand, you can see right here, has started to let go. All right. But the reason this is important is that I want to eliminate tension. So if I am taking the racket back with my right arm, my shoulder is immediately gripping, it's stabilizing. It's the same thing as if you held a book for a long time. So that left hand, or my non-dominant hand, is for you lefties, maybe a righty, you're taking the racket back and you're relieving that tension, and you're ensuring that the racket is taken back appropriately with the coil, hence it being called a unit turn. You're taking the racket back using your hips and the shoulders. All right. And this is step one of the unit turn. Now, you're going to see stylistic differences here. So Mona, this is very classic modern forehand, and the racket tip starts up. And we want the racket above the hand. It doesn't matter if you're Nick Kyrgios or Simona. I'm going to show you him in just a moment. We want that racket tip up. Now, Simona is very classic 2 L's. So you can see that the first L is here and the second L is here. So the unit turn as the racket goes back, you can see here the racket is able to create leverage over the ball because the racket starts higher than the hand. All right, so let's jump into a little bit older footage of Nick, but Nick has not changed his forehand. All right, for you guys that have been watching him, his forehand is serving forehand to the biggest in the games without a doubt. Now, the difference with the Kyrgios unit turn, and a lot of people are referring to it as next gen or whatever else. We saw this with Pete Sampras. We saw it with Ivan Lendl. We saw it even with Laver to some degree. But the elbow actually draws back here, and he's taking the racket back, zoom out, with the racket tip pointed forward.
And this is the classic next-gen forehand, right? This is kind of what people mean when they talk about next-gen. For those of us at home that don't understand the difference between traditional and next-gen, when we say next-gen, is this racket pointing forward what we mean? That's a big component of it, right?
And it's, the reason it was coined that is that a lot of players in the last decade have this particular style. If you're looking at the Kashanovs and Kyrgios and so forth, Kakanakis, the list goes on and on. You're seeing
all the young guys destroying forehands.
Yeah, and there's just more of this bullwhip. It gets a little bit more momentum, a lot harder to time. But it's worth noting because it's prevalent enough now that when we talk about unit turns, there's just not one way to do it.
Yeah, people are going to see this and think he's doing it wrong if we don't address it.
Yep, so the main thing here is just keep your eye on the non-dominant hand. As he releases, that hand still goes across the body. All right, so it's important the hand goes across the body, completes the unit turn, and from here, the racket still remains above the wrist here.
We do have a request from a member here from Justin. I see you, buddy. He's a lefty, asking to show some non-dominant forehands. I don't know that we have any lefty footage prepared, do we? Have any Nadal laying around in there? I don't know. We don't need to do it right now, but as you go through the steps.
Yeah, we'll leave that more towards the end. I'll pull up some footage of Nadal. That'll take just a second. I actually had Nadal on here, and I took him off. That might have been a mistake for all you lefties. My apologies.
And I know you're getting sick of hearing this, Justin, but obviously the same concepts apply. Just pretend you're looking in a mirror. If I was a lefty, I'd be really mad to hear that every time.
Yeah,
somebody asked me.
Yeah, righty dominant.
Justin,
world.
I'm sorry, but we're trying to be here for you, buddy.
All right, so taking a look at the Federer, the same thing, modern forehand, 2 L's, non-dominant hand on the racket frame. Right here, we can see the hand coming off. He exaggerates as much as anybody as that arm getting across the body, and that's what we want on that unit turn. So the big thing here is just remember, you're coiling. It's like pulling a rubber band back. I want to coil, and I want to stretch my obliques and my upper body till I feel that full coil, and that is going to be phase 2 of the unit turn. All right, so this next piece, actually, I want to mention this real quick because I think this is a little bit bonus. I didn't originally have it in here, but I've been talking, if you follow YouTube or whatever else that we're publishing on, I talk a lot about space. All right, so you can get your unit turn 100% correct on the coil, but if we're not creating space between the elbow and hip, you're going to be in trouble. You're going to be late, and your swing path is going to get too big trying to get out to the ball. So here, just take a look at the space between the elbows of Federer's arm. And as he takes the racket back, you'll see this space here as well, elbow to hip.
We did get a good question here from YouTube asking, does the coil actually improve consistency, or is it just more for power? You want to address that? I mean, obviously, you have to have it for power, but also with consistency, if your coil is late or improper, it can lead to mishits. It can lead to timing issues. Right?
Yeah, any of these advanced,
right?
Once we start getting more, the advanced kind of biomechanics, there's going to be issues with consistency, right? Like you're doing something, a much more dynamic movement. So kind of traditional, continental grip where you're just, linear. I'm staying sideways and hitting through the ball. That's going to be way easier in the beginning. But when we talk about increasing power, increasing top spin, you have to have this coil. And that's going to the next section that we're talking about, the lag. All right. The lag is absolutely 100% the differentiator between really advanced forehands, RPMs, that's the measurement of topspin getting, really, really high, is this lag and swing speed. Yeah. At the end of the day, where does power come from? It's racket head speed, right? It's your ability to generate the speed of the racket. And the more you coil, the more you're going to be able to do that. So it's going to take, if that's a new kind of concept, it's going to take a little time for you to build that consistency. All right. So let's talk about the lag and the slot here. Let's jump into, one of
Somebody
the biggest,
who's hitting a blistering forehand right now.
Yeah, one of the biggest forehands in the game currently. All right, so Carlos Alcaraz.
Greatest player of all time in the making? Question mark?
You're just trying to get people revved up. Rick Macy, what was that, like 2 weeks ago, came out and said that he was going to be the greatest player of all time. It's like, let the guy win a slam first before we start throwing
I feel like
accolades.
One of the top players on tour was like, Rick, just say this, so he freaks out.
Yeah.
Right? Like, how much pressure is there on you? And Rick Macy is saying you're going to be the greatest player of all time.
Yeah,
I mean,
the guy's good. He could potentially take over the #1 world ranking at the US Open. Yeah, if Medvedev doesn't get to the finals. All right, so here, interesting enough, with Alcaraz, he's somewhere in between. He's not necessarily next gen. He's not necessarily modern. He's in between. The racket's not straight up, but it doesn't start that early phase of pointing forward until the back end of the stroke. So he's got kind of this hybrid of the stroke. Now, what I really want you to see here is what's going on with the leg and the foot. You'll notice that the knee is bent, and this is because he is loading energy through the ground. And this is the starting phase of the lag. All right, the lag is a byproduct of pushing through the ground with the kinetic chain and then firing the hip. So as he's pushing through the ground, the racket gets to extension. Now, I'll point this out. A straight arm on the backswing, don't copy that. I mean, if you can, fantastic. But we saw it with Fernando Gonzalez. We see it a bit with Fed. It's really, really difficult. It's part of the reason his forehand is so big is the lever gets really, really long. But what you'll find here is that as he's pushing through the ground, his hip is going to start to uncoil. And when this happens, I think this piece is really big for you players out there. If you're trying to learn how to incorporate the lag and it's new to you, as you push through the ground, make sure that your chest is pointed forward as you initiate your forward swing.
Can you give so if I'm an intermediate player and I don't really know what the lag is supposed to feel like, you have any comparables in other sports, or is there something else that I may have done in my life that feels like this, where I can associate, okay, well, what I'm trying to accomplish is to feel this? Like we talk about cracking a bullwhip. Is it sort of like that? We talked about the hammer. Like, is there a tool or something that we've done that we would feel like, okay, this is supposed to feel like this?
Similarities through the bullwhip, but I think the easiest way to feel it, and something that we incorporate with our students, and it's something that you have to have two people, or either, I've even had someone use a door. So if you imagine if I had a towel and I had it behind me and Scott was holding it, with the towel behind me, I can't produce a ton of force through any of the major muscles, from my chest or anything else. From here, I have to use the ground. I have to push through the ground and really drive forward. And as I get enough momentum, I can pull it loose and catch up.
Kind of making me think of tug of war. Obviously, you wouldn't line up like this to pull, but it's sort of the same concept, right? Like when I get in a tug of war, I've got to really load my legs and pull. Yeah. Sort of the same concept.
You just reverse
it. Direction.
Yeah, you reverse it. Yep. So it's this way, and I'm having that pull effect. Now, part of what makes this important, part of what makes this impactful is that the racket starts up above the hand, and then on the forward swing, you'll see that the racket ends up in this position where it's slightly below the hand. And the reason we want this is that imagine if you were throwing an axe, right? The weight on the end of the axe would be heavier than the weight that's at the handle. So it would drop. And as you were pulling it around, it would have to catch up. And we want this because we want the racket having on the swing path, having to swing up to the ball. This piece is really, really important. So let's go back for just a second. So on this forehand, the unit turn, he pushes through the ground, fires the hip. All right. And now this point, as the chest begins to face forward, he enters what we refer to as the slot. And the slot is this mechanism of the butt cap of the racket not pointing directly at the ball.
Can you zoom in just a skosh more?
Yeah.
I'll get my big head out of the way here.
But actually pointing more towards 45 degrees. I'm going to show you this in different footage as well. Let's take a look at Djokovic. Doesn't matter who the player is, they all lag. All right, so Novak's chest starts to point forward right there. Here's a really good image of it to where you can see the slot. And you'll notice it's not straight on. It's more towards like a 45 degree towards the ball. So why do we need the lag, right? There's this energy being built up like a bullwhip, like Scott mentioned, and then the racket plays catch up to the ball. It plays catch up out to contact, as you can see there. All right, so jumping into contact, just looking over, making sure I'm not missing anything.
I've got a couple pretty good questions that I think will help folks understand if you're open to one or two real quick.
Let's get it.
So
Sure.
2 or 3 different people have asked about how to make the lag a byproduct of hip rotation instead of artificially inducing it. Along the same lines, when does the non-dominant arm start to get out of the way? So like it's sort of understanding how this all works together. I think that's probably what you're getting ready to go into next. But if you have a simple answer.
Yeah, the left arm we're going to talk about in the finish, but we'll the follow through. But I'll jump into it a little bit now. When working through it, don't focus on your hips so much. Focus on your shoulders. All right. So if you focus on loading, if you're semi-open stance and you're focused on loading, as you're working through, automatically, as I open my chest, my arm will go to extension behind me, and I'll create the lag. So focus on your shoulders more than your hips. The hips are going to happen naturally because
that's good advice, because I know a lot of people are thinking, especially like guys who've played golf, and they're thinking like, I've got to activate from my hips. It's like, it's pretty hard to turn your shoulders and not turn your hips.
Right.
So if you're thinking upper body, lower body is going to sort of fall in line.
And for a while there, I was being coached to, the hip fires first. Does the hip fire first? A little bit. Not a ton, but if you really put the emphasis on the shoulders, I think you're going to find what you need. And now, the one caveat I will tell you, if you have problems with tension, this is going to be an issue. Like the loose hand is an absolute must. You've got to keep the hand loose enough that the wrist, once the wrist lays back, that the hand can go through the motion without being stiff. So real quick, let's touch on that. Let's talk about the pliability of the wrist. All right.
That was step 4 anyway, wasn't it?
Step 4 was contact, but I want to focus on the wrist just a little bit. The wrist obviously plays a role into contact here. So the racket above the wrist, but on the forward movement here, you'll see how much the wrist lays back. And this is letting the racket take over. If the wrist is loose, the wrist laying back like this should happen regardless. Now, I will tell you there's something that I see pretty common players do. I'm going to choke up so you guys can see. And it's allowing the racket to fall on edge this way. And this is fine, but the problem is the racket is only going to work to here to contact. When we're taking the racket back, we really want to make sure that it's getting through here and the wrist is more laid back, so the racket is more behind us.
The butt cap's pointing more off to the side.
To the 45.
I mean, how many of you guys have had instruction from coaches that were like, show me the flashlight? They want you to show the butt cap of the racket here and the butt cap of the racket here. That's fine when you're first learning forehands. You want to take it to that next level, you've got to twist quite a bit more.
We want to lay it back a bit more. So Simona here, as the racket comes forward, you can see that wrist is still laid back, and this is allowing the racket to stay below the hand. All right. So that relaxed grip, the relaxed forearm is absolutely critical with working forward. And here, I mean, this is just a great picture of really good contact. And to me, this is one of the essential pieces of an advanced forehand. The racket is below the hand throughout the stroke. All right. So the racket has swung up to contact, and there you can see the wrist is still relaxed.
I've also been told that it helps. Whoops. To roar loudly when you're trying to hit a bigger forehand.
Don't mess with
I
Simone,
don't really
man.
know why anyone lets me on the internet.
Yeah, me neither.
While you're getting into the next step here, I'm going to answer some quick questions that I saw come in that I think I can knock out really quickly and be of use. Justin, one of our members, said, let me pick your brain about ball timing, meaning getting to the ball to position to set up and unload. So I'm actually going to steal one of Nate's fortes here. It's fast feet, slow hands, right? So no matter how fast or slow the ball is traveling, it's always in your best interest to get there as quickly as you can and then take micro adjustment steps to find that timing. For most players, it's almost always in your best interest to get that coil set up. If you're really advanced and you're able to sort of time everything a little bit better, then it's okay to start your coil, in rhythm with as the ball comes in. But if you have timing issues, typically the quicker you can get there with your feet, the quicker you can get into your unit turn, the better, right?
Yeah, and stalking, right? So if I'm moving to the ball, I should stalk. I should always be centralizing my forehand, right? So I want to be in my ready position that centralizes my forehand. And as I move, this is how I'm going to move. So I can initiate that unit turn just as I see. The minute I see that I'm getting a forehand, I want to be here stalking. And then I'm going to get the rest of the swing. Now, for timing, if you're not in your unit turn by the time the opponent has put the ball on your side of the court, you're going to be late.
Bears. Yep.
Yeah.
One other question. Larry asked, how about grip tension? So the example I always like to use, hold your racket like you would hold a baby bird. You don't want to squeeze that baby bird to death, but you don't want the baby bird to fly away. So minimum tension, but enough where your racket's not sliding around in your hand. Along those same lines, somebody asked which finger should be most dominant in the forehand grip. I would say the claw, right? Top three.
Can be.
You're not putting, because if you're relaxing tension in your hands, it's going to start really with your pinky, work its way up to the index. You're going to have to just, by nature of the way a tennis racket is built and how your hand is shaped, you're going to have more tension in these three fingers than you are on these two.
Sure. When in time, and let's just talk about where your grip is. In time, like the more Western your grip is going to go, you want to make sure that you're feeling these two fingers and that you're leaving the upper part of your hand with pliability. But the main thing here is you can see just how much of my hand is off the grip. I want it to be pliable. If I'm way up here on the grip, it's going to be really hard to keep the racket loose, right? So relax the hand, get it at the bottom of the grip. So there's that nice kind of pliability, dexterity through the stroke.
Absolutely. All right, carry on. I think we've got to most of the questions in here from our members and plus folks. Plus folks, you guys have been quiet. Oh, here we go. Here's some dialogue here. Michael and Christopher, I'm going to let you get on camera here in a second. Once we go through the last couple steps here, we'll tag you in.
All right, so let's jump into it here. We'll go back to Novak here with contact. Most of us are going to have a slight bend to our arm at contact, and that's totally fine. Federer, Alcaraz, these straight arms, fantastic if you can do it. The timing is a lot more difficult, but the bent arm is fine. But the main thing that you're focused on is on contact is that it's occurring in front of your body. So here, as we draw this line, you can see that it's happening in front of the center line of the body. Now, through contact, what you really want to be thinking as your hand is moving towards the ball is you want to throw your hand towards the ball. So a lot of times on the forward swing, what happens on contact, we start thinking about the follow through without actually getting the ball to the direction that we're intending. So the arm comes across the body. It comes this way. So as you make contact, send the hand out. And the way that we know that you're doing this, or the way that you'll know that you're doing it correctly, is that on the finish, you'll see here that Novak's racket tip is pointed forward.
Zoom in a scotch. Oh, man.
Right. And as we can take a look at a dozen of these forehand. I think this footage is actually Ian Westerman's from Essential. So Ian, thanks for letting me borrow your footage.
I think steal is the word.
Well, we're buddies. I felt like borrowing. So here you'll see this as well. Racket tip points forward. He's sending the hand out through contact. It doesn't matter who the player is. You're going to see this time and time again. There we don't get to see the racket all the way, but you can see the racket tip out forward. We'll go to, let's go to Alcaraz.
Oof.
Racket tip is forward. And this is the basis of the windshield wiper forehand. I think sometimes we go windshield wiper and everyone's going here, right? Remember we talked about that space, that elbow getting away from the arm. And as you're swinging forward, that arm should extend. That racket tip should be out towards the court when done correctly.
That's an important delineation too, because I think a lot of even coaches get this wrong. They think to get their students to create more topspin, they've got to break their wrist too early. And as you see here, can you go back to Alcaraz real quick?
Sure.
If you see Alcaraz go in slow motion here from contact forward, I mean, you can see, watch how long his wrist sort of stays lagged, and then the extension right after it, extension, bam. That's the first time his wrist actually broke, right? It was well after contact, not right after. That's going to give you that short angle accidentally. So for depth and power, watch this extension. That's what we're looking for. That wrist doesn't break quite as early as a lot of players think that it might. Sorry, carry on.
I think a great, the doubles when you're warming up, it's always like, it's stupid. We're playing down the line and the whole game is going, the whole match is going to be cross court. What I always liked about it is that when you hit down the line, you're practicing your extension, right? So like if you're out there playing and you feel like you're hitting the ball short, start hitting some down the line and focus on letting the arm go out to the ball. And that's going to be really, really helpful. All right, so let's go to the Mighty Fed here. So this piece is really important. The swing path should always occur on the dominant side of your body. So what you'll notice here is if we divide Federer in half, we don't want to see his racket over on this side of his body. All right, and now I don't advise a lot with Federer.
You're talking about in the backswing. Like you don't want to see him over-rotate where his racket's back here.
Yep.
Okay.
And I don't advise copying Federer. I think everything Federer does is amazing, but a lot of times I'm working with students that are trying to drop the racket on the side of the body this way. I think that's really difficult to do. But here you'll see how much the racket actually stays on that side of the body. And this here, like when you're talking about lag, that's it right there. That's the lag that's being created. The wrist is laid back, it's relaxed, and then the racket snaps to the ball. All right. Now, the other piece I wanted to note here, jumping into the contact point, is when you're appropriately swinging to your target, you'll notice that his elbow doesn't break on the non-dominant side. His elbow breaks on the dominant side. So it's here, then it breaks, and then the body plays catch up with it. But let me reiterate this really quick because I think this is really, really important as far as the swing path. We'll go to Rublev. As big as his forehand is, notice how the racket stays on the dominant side of his body at all times. All right. So meaning on the take back. Sorry, Scott, you clarified that a moment. But right here, right, racket is never over on that non-dominant side, and especially for some of us trying to create power, the swing tends to get back over here, and we don't want that. We want everything on this dominant side. So let's talk follow-throughs. There's a lot of them. So what we're seeing with kind of the traditional is above the shoulder. And the higher you go with your follow-through, I'll let this play for just a moment. The higher you go with the follow-through, a lot of times the more height you're going to get, the more topspin that you're going to get. But, it used to be that's the only way that you would finish. That's how it was taught, is finish high, finish high. But like there's kind of the classic finish, the elbow pointing forward and the racket nice and high above the shoulder. But there's multiple different ways to finish. If you take a look at Kyrgios here, look at that finish, and we're seeing that more and more. Now, I don't advise this from the baseline if you're not playing at a 4.550 level and above, if that's something new. But where this does make sense is when you're shorter in the court and you're trying to hit a short angle forehand. If you're trying to get that ball up and down really fast, then it makes total sense to put the sword in the sheath at the hip. All right, but the one that we see a lot is finishing more even with the shoulder. So it's not necessarily above the shoulder, it's just even with the shoulder, and that's going to be a drive. So to differentiate the follow-throughs, typically the higher you go, with the finish above the shoulders, the more height, a lot of spin. The more even I go with the shoulder, the more I'm going to drive. I'm going to get the ball through the court penetrating.
John Blay, pay attention here. This answers your last 2 questions.
There you go. And so the one around the hip, although we see Kyrgios and a lot of players do it on tour, I would reserve that for if I'm trying to hit a short angle or something. If I'm moving into the court, I've ran out of real estate, and I'm trying to get that ball up and down real quick, I'll go ahead and put that racket towards the hip.
This is a good question that I'll address as well, because it's very in line with what we're talking about right now. We talked about how if you break your wrist early, that's creating that short sort of buggy whip forehand out wide.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of players are asking, well, what about on approach shots? Obviously, I'm closer to the net. If I extend the same distance, I'm going to miss the ball deep. That's true, but you're not going to break your wrist to the side. You're going to break it up, right? You're just going to come up the back of the ball at a sharper angle to create more spin, similar, if not identical, racket head speed, but more spin. Since you're closer to the net, you're going to need more of that to keep the ball back down in the court.
Yep, you'll get it across your body quicker, more up and down in order to get that ball to, obviously, being short in the court, you don't have as much court to hit into. So yes, a lot of this isn't a one size fit all, right? Like, we're just talking about the fundamentals. If you watch these guys hit, part of their strokes are they have the ability to adapt, right? So it's like they always have these fundamentals, but if they're picking a ball off their feet, you're going to see them improvise, and maybe the elbow goes out. They're going to do whatever they have to do to survive the ball. The buggy whip.
This is important too, because I think a lot of players just think, okay, this is my stroke. This is my follow through. Nope. Like, your follow through is going to change quite a bit depending on what you're trying to do with the ball, depending on where the ball is relative to your strike zone. So don't be married to just the same follow through. You're going to see a lot of different ones for different use cases in any high level player.
Yeah. I mean, take a look at Rublev. There's not a guy that drives a whole lot more, like big, huge, flat forehands than Rublev. But even here in this situation, ball's super deep. He's caught moving, so he improvises. Contact still out in front, and then he goes through the Rafa buggy whip finish. That's not his traditional forehand, but that is just part of the game now, to where if you're late, if you don't have a lot of time, you need to get the ball up and down, that buggy whip is something you're going to look for. Rafa just does it a lot more than others because of the ability to create that excessive topspin.
That's right.
All right. So in summation, we're going to run through these really quick. Who should we look at? Let's go to Simona. Let's give the women some love here.
I mean, she crushes her forehand. She is a good use case example. Zoom in on her.
Yep. And it's just a good image here. Okay. So ready position. Allow the racket to list towards your non-dominant side with the strings down. Okay, regardless of your grip, whether you're using an Eastern, semi-Western, or Western. As you're taking the racket back, make sure the racket head is up, whether it's this classic modern or if it's the next gen, where the elbow takes the racket back, where the racket head is forward. The left hand, sorry, lefties, your non-dominant hand takes the racket back.
Sorry, Justin.
To help relieve tension. And this is where we get into our unit turn. So an appropriate unit turn, we're looking for this arm to come across the body. We don't want the arm to go too far back, or it's a hard time with timing of getting the racket back forward. Here, she'll initiate the forward swing by using the kinetic chain, really pushing down through the ground. The ground doesn't go anywhere, so that then in turn starts to drive the hip. Here we see the lag, wrist laid back, racket below the wrist, and the butt cap at a 45-degree angle. Remember,
not flashlight.
That's right. Remember, we talked about here, and this is a great image, the chest is forward. All right. So if you're practicing the lag, get the chest forward, and you'll automatically start to enter that lag. Now from here on the forward swing, you can see good spacing, plenty of space between the elbow and the hip.
Can I give you kudos on a tip that I think probably really helped a lot of people?
Yeah.
And that you should say a lot more often.
Sure.
When you activate your shoulders, it's going to straighten that arm naturally. Not fully straightened. We don't endorse that. But if you're trying to think about what this feels like, kind of think about your arm as a noodle and what would happen if you just slung your shoulders and the wet noodle followed around, right? So think about how your shoulder rotation, if your arm is relaxed, will actually activate that arm and create this whip lag motion we're talking about. Sure.
It's almost like a compliment. Thanks, buddy.
It's the nicest thing you're going to get from me on the internet.
All right, so contact. Don't focus on getting your arm straight. Keep the ball out in front of the body. And remember, send the hand. Get the hand to go towards your target. So you want your hand going out into the court. The racket follows. You can see there how long the racket stays on that dominant side.
If you can roar, it helps.
Yep. And from here, and I think this is important too, like the elbow. Remember, the elbow doesn't break until later in the stroke. All right, if I zoom out just a bit. There, so right there, this is the windshield wiper to where the racket is up, the racket tip is forward, and then it comes around, and the follow-through can be over the shoulder, even with the shoulder down by the hip. There's a number of follow-throughs. There's a big variation. But if you're doing those things, if you're doing those 5 things, then you have the blueprint to a really, really advanced forehand.
Round of applause for Nate Dogg. That was awesome today, my dude.
Hey, thanks, man. Appreciate it.
All right, so it is 12:41 in Virginia Beach, Virginia, where we are filming live from. We are going to open up the floor first, of course, to our Plus members. I need to turn my volume up so I can hear you guys. Let's get into some questions here. So, Michael, if you're cool, I'm going to ask you to unmute here. Can you hear us?
No pressure.
Let me get you on the screen. Yep, we can hear you perfect. Let me turn my volume up a little bit more. All right, so I'll let you, I see your questions here about headlight and head heavy, but I'll let you fire away just in case we answered anything.
What triggered those thoughts about headlight and heavy was the metaphor of the axe and the heavy head, or the golf. You talk about golf heads and feeling that lag. So, when you think about headlight versus head heavy, and sort of lag promotion from a heavy head, and then factoring in the concept of plow through, is that it's not a next gen concept, plow through, because it's really about racket head speed, maybe more so than like mass meeting mass.
Sure.
So why don't start with how head heavy and head light would impact racket head speed.
Yeah, I mean, if it's head heavy, you're traditionally gonna have more power, right? It's gonna pick up more, or it's gonna have more weight as it's distributed. And like you just said, the golf analogy is perfect. It's going to lend itself to be forward with the momentum. Now, the plow piece is interesting. It's a really good question, because if you look at the previous generation, right? Like everyone had a racket that was over 12 ounces, 13 ounces that's on tour. And most of the players still do, right? The most of the players still on tour are having specialized rackets made. They're very, very heavy. And that is just the idea that they're good enough athletes that as soon as they get the racket moving, that additional weight picks up more plow and it's able to work through the ball. Now, the lighter rackets, that's still more so for just kind of us, the recreational players. I mean, collegiate level players as well. But like at some point, they start getting specialized. Lighter rackets are going to be easier to get moving forward, to get moving faster for the racket speed, but they're going to lack plow. So the idea would be like if Scott hits a big old serve at me and I'm playing with a 10-3, I'm going to have a hard time defending that pace regardless of how fast my racket is able to move, right? So like for me, I'm always like, I suggest playing with something in between a 10-8, an 11-3, plenty of racket head speed. And then as far as the balance, that's really just kind of up to personal preference, right? Do you like it evenly balanced? Do you like it more being
a lot of it depends on your stroke
head light, head heavy?
Yeah. To give you a really, really simple example, have you ever seen, like, let's say a little 100-year-old man walk out on the tennis court with a snowshoe looking racket and hit a serve that could have easily been 85 miles an hour? And you're like, how on earth? All the weight's in the head. So the second he gets over the tipping point, all of the weight in the head's swinging for him. So he's got to have enough strength to get that racket up to the tipping point. It would be the same concept on the side of our body with a forehand. Once you enter the slot, the head heaviness of the racket would then take over. I'm a big fella. I'm 210 pounds and 6'3", and I hit with an Eastern forehand grip. So I'm just as good with like a 2x4 out there.
You want some weight.
Yeah. I need some handle heaviness. Otherwise, I'm going to hit the back fence with every ball. Does that help?
Yeah, I think so. Could you talk about the grip question I had about the index finger?
The trigger finger. Yeah, so talk about...
My serve is doing, I said it's very consistent. I evolved my grip based on some video I saw from you guys. And so I've got my trigger finger sort of up the racket a bit on the serve. And I wondered if that just applies as well in the forehand, because I guess by moving your finger upward, up the handle, it mitigates the temptation or the feeling of over gripping it, right?
Yeah.
Is that the primary reason why you move that? And does it apply in the forehand and maybe in the backhand as well?
100% on the forehand. It's going to give you more dexterity. It's going to allow you, when I'm spreading my finger out, it's going to allow this position to happen more naturally. It's going to give me more feel, right? I'm going to be more connected with the racket. The more my hand comes together and I'm holding it with my hands tight, I start building tension. It's easier to actually squeeze, because that would be the nature of squeezing. I don't feel this end of the blade as much as I'm coming through. Once I'm here, I have a lot more control of this side of the blade because of that index finger actually controlling that part of the racket.
I mean, to really illustrate, when you stand with your hands at your sides, your fingers don't naturally do this, right? So your hand, when it's relaxed, is going to be more of a web. So that trigger finger out is always going to lead to less tension when you're holding the racket, right?
Yeah, I think I had been smothering. Historically, I felt like I had a great crossword forehand, and I think maybe last season I felt like I was smothering it, not really whipping through. And I think that's evolving a little bit with the trigger finger moving, which trickled down from the serve concept.
That's
right.
Awesome.
Perfect.
I love that you connected the two. I'll be honest, I had an arm injury that makes it very difficult for me to spread the index finger, and it was the biggest adjustment I made on my game when I got back to playing as a young man. Not having the ability to pull the trigger finger out consistently, I started kind of like clubbing the ball and losing feel, and really like the dexterity of like getting the ball up and down into small parts of the court. So yeah, it makes a big difference when you start getting that feel of getting that finger out.
Yeah. And if I was watching your video about, I guess it was Rafa and the inside out, and taking that, looking at the court, stepping to your left as a forehand, right-hand guy, stepping with your left foot and then turning and shuffling over so that you're open and ready to go inside out. When you're doing that, is it one big step or two? Like, what would be too many big first steps to position yourself to get the right contact point?
It really,
with the inside out forehand. Like,
you want
if
to
you
take
get
it?
a
Yeah,
ball
go
and
ahead.
say, okay, I'm going to need 3 big steps to get there to turn. Is that just too far? Just hit a backhand? And like, what's a reasonable move? Like,
You just got to be thinking, you've got to be thinking when that ball crosses the net, you've got to be ready for action, right? So if you can't make the timing, if you can't get around that backhand and be in position to start your unit turn before the ball crosses the net, you're in trouble.
And you're talking about like we're at on the court too, right? Like, so
you're at the hash line and you've got, the left-hand side of the court, singles court. If the ball is angling, I mean, you got to really get a good jump on it to get past halfway of that half of the court.
What I would always keep in mind is when the ball is on the outer thirds of the court, on the ad court as a righty, if I'm trying to run around that ball, if I'm in the outer thirds, I have to hit a winner. I have to hit a winner. I have to hit a forced error.
Because you're so far out of position, you're doing too much damage to your own defensive game.
Right. So it makes sense if the ball's short in the court, because like now I can quickly rip that ball, pinch the net, put away whatever's coming back, or I'm just more likely to hit the winner. But yeah, I wouldn't get caught trying to get to those balls. Really, it's like I try to see the court as 60-40. I teach the court 70-30 for those that move really, really well. The juniors that are really quick is like, yeah, let's centralize the sword, get over there 70-30. But anything that feels like if I don't hit a winner and this guy blocks it back in the open court, you made the wrong choice there probably.
Right. It's got to be deep, and your cage concept is so cool. Get it deep, get them in the cage, and then maybe come in on one and go cross court.
Yeah.
Do you feel like a lead singer at the show where they're singing the words to your songs? He's talking about your cage, man.
Cage.
That's awesome.
That's it. The cage.
That's awesome.
It got me through my entire career. It was the only thing I was good at. So I'm glad it's working for you.
His backhand's garbage. That's why he needs a cage.
That's not nice. That's not nice at all.
On Archer, the Kjartan idea of high top spin ball to start him in the cage or keep him in the cage. I'm picking up on that. So
my 2 favorite players of all time, Gustavo Kuerten and Del Potro. Love a good cage.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right, I've hogged it up.
Michael, no, dude, you're
Appreciate
awesome.
You,
Thanks
man.
for tuning in. Great question.
Thanks for dropping by.
Thank you.
All right. Moving right along here. Christopher, man, what is going
It's been
on,
too
dude?
long.
Let me tag you in here. Ask you to unmute. Talk to us, man. What's going on?
Not much, guys. I thought you guys abandoned us.
No, we've been building some epic stuff for you. I unfortunately am also the CEO of this wonderful business. So if the business grows, it means I miss some live streams. So we're back in action though.
That's okay. It's good to hear you guys. See you guys.
Thanks,
Likewise, man. I know you had some questions about the kinetic chain. Do you want to elaborate a little bit more? And then Nate's much smarter than me. Well, at tennis at least.
Well, no, I'm just always curious about, when you have a chain, how one link ends and another link starts, or before another link begins, of the exact firing points of the kinetic chain, in this case, on the forehand.
You want to feel this? You talked a lot about activation from the feet and how that's sort of the initiation piece. What you want to talk about sort of the next?
Yeah, I mean, really, the most simplest way to think of it, it's feet, hands, feet, right? Like as I'm initiating, everything's happening with the lower part of my body. And as the forward movement is initiated through the kinetic chain, hips, shoulders, now it's all hand, right? I should be thinking about the hand going through the ball and from here. And then as I come around, the feet then recover through the stroke. But yeah, is there anything specific that you're thinking as far as the stop? I mean, there's so many moving parts on the kinetic chain.
I've been through all evolutions of the forehand, since I go back to the wood racket days. So I've seen the forehand go through everything.
Mm-hmm.
I think also, what about the journey of the hitting elbow?
The journey of the hitting elbow?
About, say, the hitting elbow, its distance from the body, because I've heard of often taught, like, you want to go inside out with the elbow.
You do, yeah.
But even the length of how high the elbow is up, and we're coming down, and what is the exact context? I mean, spacing. What should proper spacing be at contact?
So I said it earlier in the live stream that I feel like I keep doing a lot of videos on spacing, and the reason being is that I've worked with thousands and thousands of students, and it always comes back with like kind of the high level, intermediate to advanced players, and even like really good collegiate players, spacing. And is it an issue with the footwork, or is it an issue with the actual technique itself? And a lot of times it's actually a technical issue. But the distance, regardless if I'm taking the elbow back for kind of that next gen style, or if it's a modern, the distance in which I keep from my hip is pertinent, because it has to stay true through the stroke until the forward swing. And then on the forward swing, what you're talking about, can you zoom out?
I get it right here.
Or Scott's got it? Never mind. Sorry, buddy.
You're going to get to see a sneak peek in the sketchy setup out wide here. Is that enough?
Yeah, that should be okay. But so as I'll put the racket down. But so what you're talking about is the elbow comes back closer to the body when it's here. In order for the elbow to clear, I'm going to go this way. I'm not going to suddenly internally rotate in order to get it round. So that's the piece that you're talking there. And then we'll see the elbow point towards the finish. Now, obviously with the next gen guys, I mean, you take a guy like Thanasis Kokkinakis, when he takes, I mean, he's here. He's all the way up. So he's just creating more momentum. He's able to create a higher lever out to the ball by taking it up much higher. I would never teach that, because the timing on that is very, very difficult. But he's a professional athlete that has the ability to, kind of like Kyrgios, to put that into their game. The most simple way we teach it is we tell everyone beach ball spacing.
Yep.
If you were holding a beach ball from the very get, and we will toss, a tennis ball to somebody holding a beach ball. If I turn and I hit it with the beach ball, this elbow stays constant spaced where I'm not ever tucking in.
Yeah, a lot of it is just maintaining the correct distance throughout the stroke. Like, people will sometimes drag their elbow on their rib cage. They'll set up correctly, but then they'll come more outside in and do all kinds of contact point damage. So a lot of it's just maintaining proper spacing through contact.
And you guys consider or believe the racket lag is something that naturally happens due to the looseness of the body?
Ideally.
Yeah, I mean,
I
don't think it's a byproduct of being loose. I think in order for it to happen, the body has to be loose. But I think that the lag itself is being created by the body kind of fighting itself, right? As I'm loaded down and I'm swinging forward, the weight of it lags. It's just like on the serve where we talk about a cartwheel. If I go to do a cartwheel and my left hand goes, the right's going to take a second, but eventually it's got to play that kind of catch up as well. But yeah, I don't think the body being loose creates the lag. I just think it's a 100% must. It's an absolute for the lag to be created.
I liked your tip on, again, like activating the shoulders and maintaining relaxed arms. It helps. Is it perfect? Of course not, but it's
the beginning stages of learning it. Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. Aaron, welcome in. Chris, any other questions for us, man? It's good to hear from you. I'm sorry we've been absent from live streaming.
Yeah, it's okay. I've been calling the office several times over the month.
Is Nate there?
No, I didn't say, hey, what happened to
We're back in action. Our goal is to get at least, I think, a couple in per month, and we're going to start interviewing some players. I don't know if you guys saw, we formally partnered with the Bryan brothers. So they're actually going to show up on some live streams, and Nate's pretty good at tennis, but Bob and Mike are quite a bit better.
Turns out they're a lot better.
That'll be cool. Be on the lookout for that. I think we have a live stream with them coming up in a couple months.
Yeah, Chris, we're going to be getting 2 of these a month at least out. It's going to be a big piece of what we're moving into going into the fall. So getting everything squared away, and we're ready to get back on camera and have some fun.
All right, great, guys. Thank you so much.
Thanks, man.
Buddy.
Thanks for
Good
tuning
seeing
in.
you, man.
All right. I see the comments flowing in on YouTube and on Facebook, guys. I'll try to get to them. We've got about 4 minutes here, and I've got to take care of my Plus members and then my Play Your Court members as well. So to Beth here, Beth, let me know if you want me to unmute you. There you are. What's going on?
Hey, Beth.
Hey.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Thans for doing this.
Yeah,
Perfect
of course.
time. I've been working on my forehand and I'm having trouble because I use my arm too much. I'm getting injured.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
Oh, the wrist widget. I know that well.
Is that the TFCC?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Both of us have both of those torn, so we feel your pain, quite literally.
Right. So I've actually been watching a video of myself as you've been playing your videos to see where I am making the mistakes. And it seems to be, I do the unit turn okay, but then when I make contact, my shoulders are still facing to the side. I can't get this shoulder out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
So any tips on using my arm less? I feel like I'm pushing the racket more than pulling the racket.
Yeah. So, and that is that, take it step by step and shadow it for a little bit. And then when you go to hit balls, do a very controlled environment. It's very hard to hit with somebody. But even as you're shadowing, as you're setting up, just get in the habit as you start to that uncoil, just focus. You know, I've got the D to sign, let it make sure that it's forward. And then what I would combine is we put a video out a while back that talked about pulling the curtain. And so what that referred to is with your non-dominant hand, is I'm starting to uncoil. I want the left hand here to go to my chest. And this actually answers a question that came earlier about the role of the non-dominant arm. But they work in unison. So as I'm starting to uncoil and the left hand gets here, so as my chest is forward, my left hand gets here, what also happens is it slows down my left side. So if I'm slowing down my left side, the right side will then speed up out to contact. But if you get, Beth, if you get that piece, you've got it, right? It's like once you get your body to train and just get that muscle memory of opening up with the racket behind you, it's just going to take a little bit of time, but do it really slow before you try to take it up fast.
I will look for that video because that's exactly it. I can't get my left hand out of the way. It's not moving.
Yeah, and that's it. If you stay here too long, you just end up hitting across your body. So, I mean, the old tip, and it's still a really good one, is catch the racket. You know, a lot of coaches when I was growing up, it was, you know, you hit and you catch the racket here to make sure there's a full uncoil. That's still a really good tip.
I mean, you think all the way back to the old Pete Sampras forehand, it almost stopped there anyway, right? It's like that extra wrist break is sort of just mechanical to some degree.
Yeah.
I like your cat. Dog? Cat? Cat.
Thanks.
Cat.
It's a new kitten and he won't stay off my lap.
Oh,
Cute little guy.
keep her.
Does that help, Beth? Anything else on the forehand side of things for today?
That was great. I'm going to definitely work with that. Thank you.
Awesome. Keep us posted with your progress.
Good
We'll see
seeing
you.
you,
We'll
Beth.
see you on the next live, hopefully. All right. Gerardo, you said not directly a tennis question. What app are we using to scrub on the film? I think. What are you using right now?
So this is actually
Outdated
iCoach.
tech.
Yep, it's iCoach.
Coach's Eye.
Coach's Eye. Yeah, gracious.
Yeah, they don't
iCoach
really
is-
exist anymore, right? Like
Well,
they're not supporting the products.
Yeah, so we're now using
Apparently, Nate's the
Ornform.
only person who uses this.
The preference. So if you've seen in video analysis or anything else, I'm using Ornform.
Oh God, that was a question earlier. Sorry, from I'll get there. Keep talking.
So Ornform is a superior app, and I believe they have purchased Coach's Eye. Coach's Eye's data, nothing is being supported anymore. I'm using it because at this time it's easier to categorize and keep everything that I need in one spot. But as far as the actual analysis piece, Ornform is definitely the superior product.
So two people asked us this actually. Conrad with a K and Ashley were asking, is it possible that you can analyze my video and give some advice? I'm a beginner. That's what Conrad said. If you're a Play Your Court Plus member, not only can you jump on these Zoom calls with us, but Nate will analyze one of your videos per month, I think is what we're doing right now.
Yep.
As more and more Plus members come in, I would imagine the volume of which that becomes realistic will scale back a little bit. But for right now,
as I get them.
Yeah, for right now, you're a Plus member, and Nate, not me, because I'm not as good at coaching tennis as you are, will review your strokes. I have no rebuttal. All right, let's see here. We've got a few more. Gregory, a basic member, was asking a question about a racket here. I'm going to let you field this one because it's really hard. Good luck. Gregory said, I currently have a pure strike, but I realized that the head was heavy, which caused me to be late on my forehand and my serve. So I discovered the Yonex E-Zone 98. The balance of the racket with the weight in the Y area, I don't know what that means, allows me to get the racket up quicker to be more consistent on all of my shots. Can you comment on how important the weight and balance of your racket plays a big part? Actually, we kind of already did that, right? We actually fielded that exact question.
Yeah, and this honestly, it's just personal preference. Yeah. I mean, like I played with an evenly balanced racket for half my career. Then I got into a head light racket where I was actually putting more weight into the handle than anything else because I wanted the racket to whip around relatively fast. It really is personal preference. The pure strike, it depends which one you're talking about because they kind of changed them up from the first gen to the second gen, and even the third gen's a little bit different. But the kind of the advanced stick of that, the 11.3 strong, that tends to be more headlight than anything. So it sounds like the E-Zone is just a good fit. If the weight's in what he's referring to, the Y, he's talking about the throw, it's just evenly balanced, and that's that's going to be easier for you as far as getting the weight distributed on the take back and forward swing.
Really helpful answer, Nate. Personal preference.
That's what I got.
No solutions for you. If it feels good,
I mean, we could get into like tech and all that, but it's a very long.
And we could better suit you with a racket if we were on court with you. But at the end of the day, it's got to feel good for you, right? I mean, there's the guidelines we talked about earlier with head heavy versus head light, but then it really just has come down to personal feel, right? Yeah. Michael asked, how does an open stance forehand versus closed stance affect unit turn and power?
How does an open stance and a closed stance? That's a really good question.
Open versus closed.
Yep.
You have 4 sentences to answer
so
that question.
Let me just.
I didn't offer any video. I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
I haven't seen if I have any footage of
of
a closed stance. Yeah. All right. So let's just take a look at the open stance here.
Zoom in.
So all of it's going to stay true throughout the stroke. Everything that we just talked about. The only thing that you're going to notice is that the lower body is, when you're stepping out with the right foot, you're not going to have nearly as much of a closed upper body. So what you have to ensure is that when you're going semi-open or open, that the upper body does its job coiling, right? So there you can see the upper body still very coiled, while the open stance, obviously it's open, it can't coil as much. The closed stance or the linear strike, it's pretty simple. If I turn sideways, I've automatically got a big coil, but the footwork pattern is going to change. I don't know that I have it readily available here. Let me just take a peek now. So I don't want to spend a ton of time looking for it, but with the closed stance, the main piece here is that when you pivot to when the weight distributes from your back foot to your front foot, you're going to pivot around, meaning that your right foot is going to come around. On the open stance, it becomes much more like kind of a 180 where I'm on my right foot and then I'm landing on the left foot. Closed stance, I'm from my left foot pivoting to the right foot. So I'm actually changing the direction. But that would be the only thing that I would add is that on an open stance, make sure that you're coiling your upper body, that it's not going to be as intuitive as a closed stance.
Love it.
That was like 38 sentences.
That was not 4 sentences, but it was educational. All right, AB has a follow-up on Beth's question. What's going on, AB?
Hi, Scott. Hi, Nate. Good to meet you guys.
Yeah, you too,
likewise, man. Thanks for tuning in.
So Beth asked a question about the wrist wedge, as you like to call it. My question is, I had the same problem. Not being able to complete your turn is the only reason to have this wrist wedge problem, or there are other reasons that could result in having this wrist wedge problem? The solution you gave to Beth, like use your left hand to move your upper body, I'm going to try that, but I was just wondering if there are other reasons that could result in that wrist injury.
Oh, there's a lot of them, my man.
Yeah, I mean, it could even be something totally non-tennis related. You could do a push-up the wrong way and tweak that wrist, but sorry.
Where
Talk
we
tennis
see
specific. Yeah.
So I recently, I tore my left one. I went from a two-handed backhand, now I play with a one-handed backhand because of this injury, and I did it working in my yard, gardening. So the I mean, it's
everyone say ha.
Yeah, it's too much strength on that particular joint, and then the sheath of that TFCC tears, and there's no good surgery for it. Here's the good news for it though: in time, the pain just it disperses. It's not nearly as bad. It took my right wrist about 3 months. It took almost a year for my left wrist to get to a place to where it doesn't really bother me
really
anymore.
Do anything with the TFCC tear that's super productive. Like if you remember Juan Martín del Potro, this was the injury that really ruined his
TFCC
career,
and ECU,
right? Like just there was surgery after surgery just didn't take.
Here's the culprit though.
The scar tissue typically builds over it, and the pain
subsides.
When
you're hitting a ball like this, the amount of force that's impacted from the rocket to your wrist, you're just putting an extremely heavy load on that ulnar side of your wrist. So in time, you end up blowing the TFCC, and they can fix it, but then it's like if you go out and you hit another ball and you're even remotely late, you're probably going to blow it. So as far as kind of avoiding that pain, timing is everything. Right? The more I can keep the ball out in front, the more that I'm using force to the ball, the later I am, the more the ball drives force over my wrist and creates kind of that impingement with the wrist back. But the other piece, I had a student not too long ago tear it, and his was a byproduct of just trying to use too much wrist. He was actually trying to get the wrist to snap through, which is also incorrect. I always think of the forearm. You send the hand, but the reason you pronate is because of the forearm. The forearm turns over, not the wrist. And if you focus on that, that should help alleviate the load on the wrist as well.
Yeah, in theory, if you don't flex it, you can't hurt it. I'm not a doctor, but in theory.
Clearly.
But in theory, right? Like when you stay very relaxed, it's hard to injure. It's when you tense up is when things get weird, right? So.
Okay. Yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
And I'll say again, we are certainly not doctors, so that is our best guess, not medical advice.
I will say cortisone did help me a ton with the TFCC tear.
All 5 times.
All 5 times. Hope you heal up soon, man.
Yeah. Can I ask one more question?
Of course.
Yeah. When you talked about open stance versus closed stance, what would you recommend the distance between the 2 feet be? Should the distance between 2 feet while making that forehand stroke be wider than the width of your shoulders? I read some online articles, or the distance between the 2 feet doesn't really matter much. Like, what do you guys think?
I'll address this really quickly. I don't think there's actually any correlation to the width of your shoulders because some of us have wider shoulders. Like we're the same height. I have wider shoulders than Nate does, right? Like our stance is probably pretty similar. Don't I? I don't know.
Didn't look like that there. You never want, because of balance, you never want your feet close together. You want to get wide, but there is such thing as getting too wide. Yeah, and then like it used to be kind of taught, you want your knees under your shoulders, right? Like you want your stance. I actually would suggest going a little bit wider, right? Because the wider you go, the more not all the way wide, but if you go wider, that's going to have you playing about 2 inches under your height. So that's what I always advise. If you're 6 feet, right, like try to play like you're 5'10", like try to get lower so that you're getting down and able to fight that ball off. As far as the open stance, we always tell everybody, like, think about getting your back leg, your outside leg rather, behind the ball. When you step, it should be a strong step, and it can't be shallow, right? You're going to hurt your knee, and you're not going to have any momentum to the ball.
Okay, all right.
Anything else for us, AB?
That's all. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, man. I hope that
Pleasure
wrist
meeting you,
heals
man.
up soon. Yeah, nice meeting you.
Yeah, same here.
All right, guys. We are about 10 minutes over. I am going to very, very quickly take a gander here in StreamYard and just see if we can snag any quick questions. I will call out Ken because he's got a PYC bracket finals match in Tampa on Sunday.
Ew.
Good luck.
So,
Great
Ken.
information. Looking forward to attempting at the clinic tonight and Saturday. PYC bracket final in Tampa on Sunday. A lot of questions about heavy rackets hurting rotator cuffs. We talked quite a bit about racket head speed here. Let me see if there's anything else quickly. Possible reasons for missing depth on the forehand shot from a look. We talked a lot about sort of the windshield wiper forehand being the culprit here. So think through on extension. We talked quite a bit about that being the culprit, robbing you of depth. I think we got to just about everything else, guys. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Like Nate mentioned, we're going to be doing a lot more of these. If you're inside of our Play Your Court community, as you probably noticed, you're going to get a lot more preferential treatment, especially inside the Plus community. You can join the private Zoom room here. But really appreciate you guys tuning in and watching us, and looking forward to seeing you all on the next one. Happy hitting.
Thanks, guys. See you soon. Take care.